We are often told that love is a two-way street, a mutual exchange where intentions are clear, and commitment is a natural progression. The popular belief is that if someone truly cares for you, they will claim you openly, proudly, and without hesitation. We search for grand gestures and public declarations, interpreting the absence of a label as a direct reflection of our own worth or an undeniable lack of their feelings. In this conventional narrative, the person who lingers on the periphery, unwilling to define the relationship, is seen as simply indecisive, emotionally unavailable, or perhaps just not interested enough. We internalize this lack of commitment as a personal rejection, a sign that we are not the chosen one, destined to be perpetually stuck in a state of romantic limbo. This perspective frames the situation in terms of a deficit, a missing piece, a failure to reach a destination that should have been inevitable. The common explanation suggests that these almost relationships are merely a precursor to something real, or a symptom of a partner's immaturity. Society encourages us to view this ambiguity as a problem to be solved, a puzzle to be figured out, or a test to be passed. We expend enormous emotional energy trying to decode their behavior, believing that if we can just say or do the right thing, the puzzle will be solved and the label will finally materialize. This focus on an external solution leads us down a path of anxiety and self-doubt as we question what's wrong with us rather than what's happening within the dynamic itself. It's a paradigm that places all the power and control outside of ourselves, leaving us vulnerable to the whims and uncertainties of another person's journey. However, what if this isn't about their indecisiveness or your lack of worth? What if this isn't a deficiency at all? What if the space between friends and lovers isn't an empty void, but a profoundly meaningful crucible of transformation? The mainstream interpretation leads us to believe that the lack of a formal commitment is a sign of an emotional absence, a vacuum waiting to be filled. But what if this seemingly barren space is not empty at all, but rather an intense and complex presence? What if this dynamic is less about a person's failure to love you and more about a deeper, unconscious psychological process at play, one that has nothing to do with whether or not you are good enough? This leads us to a crucial, unsettling question. What if the very reason they keep you close, yet never commit, isn't because they're unsure, but because you represent something they are, profoundly afraid of fully integrating into their own lives? What if your presence isn't an absence of love, but the presence of an immense, transformative truth that they are not yet ready to face? It is a radical departure from the conventional wisdom, asking us to look beyond the surface-level explanation of indecisiveness and peer into the psychological depths of the human psyche. This isn't about them being a bad person, but about a universal and deeply human struggle with the process of self-realization. According to Carl Jung, what a person is drawn to is often a reflection of what they unconsciously need for their own wholeness. The person who lingers on the cusp of commitment is not just attracted to their partner, but to a part of themselves that the partner embodies, the part that is whole, authentic, and unafraid to be vulnerable. This almost love is not about the other person's unavailability, but about a psychological defense mechanism. The individual keeps you close, in a controlled, non-committal state, because your presence shines a light on something within them, a shadow aspect, a wound or a potential for growth that they are not ready to confront. The commitment, the formalization of the bond, would require them to fully open the door to this unconscious material. Carl Jung would argue that the almost lover is engaged in a powerful but subconscious negotiation with their own shadow. The shadow, as Jung defines it, is the unconscious aspect of the personality that the conscious ego does not identify with. It contains repressed instincts, desires, and emotions. You, the person on the receiving end of this almost love, often represent the integrated, authentic self that the other person has yet to embrace. They see your light, your wholeness, and your capacity for a full connection, and they are drawn to it like a moth to a flame. But they cannot get too close, because the full illumination would force them to confront the parts of themselves they have been running from, the parts they have deemed unworthy of love or acceptance. They are afraid of the radical truth you hold up for them. This dynamic becomes an alchemical vessel, a sacred space where a profound internal transformation is meant to occur. The relationship, with its perpetual state of tension and ambiguity, acts as a crucible. The person on the cusp of commitment is caught between their conscious desire for a relationship and their unconscious terror of what a true union would demand of them. You in this space are not just a person they are dating. You are a catalyst, a living embodiment of the parts of their soul they have yet to reclaim. The pain of this almost love, therefore, is not a punishment, but an invitation for them to delve into the depths of their own psyche. It is a mirror reflecting their deepest fears, a rite of passage into psychological maturity that they are not yet prepared to enter. This is a dynamic where the tension is the point. The almost love is the perfect environment for this internal drama to unfold, as it allows for proximity without the full responsibility of intimacy. It's a psychological cocoon, a space where the chrysalis of a new self is being formed. The individual is held in a state of suspended animation, safe from the ultimate transformation that a committed relationship would bring. In this sense, the almost love is not a sign of your inadequacy, but a sign of your profound significance. You are not just a placeholder. You are a living oracle, a doorway to their unconscious, and the very presence that is required for their potential evolution. The pain you feel is the byproduct of a spiritual and psychological battle happening within them. The difficulty in navigating this truth lies in its profound departure from our socially conditioned expectations. We are taught to measure our value by the commitment we receive from others, and when that validation is withheld, the initial instinct is to believe we have failed. The anguish, the doubt, and the feeling of being in a state of perpetual limbo can be deeply unsettling. It is a psychological challenge because it forces us to confront our own need for external validation, to question why we seek a label to feel secure in ourselves. The social incomprehension is a major hurdle. Friends and family may offer well-meaning but superficial advice, urging us to move on or demand more without grasping the deeper psychological currents at play. This can lead to a profound sense of isolation, as if we are the only ones who understand the subtle, complex nature of this almost connection. For the person experiencing this almost love, the path forward is a daunting one. The first challenge is to look beyond the surface-level disappointment and recognize that this dynamic is a mirror for their own internal world. It requires the courage to say, "This isn't about them, it's about what their presence is revealing in me." This is a difficult and lonely journey, as it means grappling with feelings of unworthiness, of not being chosen, and the persistent ache of emotional unrequited love. Jung would refer to this as the confrontation with the shadow, a process where one must face and integrate the repressed aspects of their personality. The anxiety and emotional pain are not a failure, but a signpost, a signal that this is an opportunity for profound self-discovery. The discomfort and emotional turmoil are part of the process of individuation, as described by Jung. Individuation is the process of becoming a whole, individual being, distinct from the collective psyche and one's unconscious self. The almost love, with its unique blend of closeness and distance, forces the individual to separate their own sense of self-worth from the actions of another person. The pain of not being chosen is the crucible in which the true self is forged, independent of external validation. It is in this uncomfortable state that one is invited to build a new inner temple, a sanctuary of self-worth that no one else can tear down. The social pressure to have a relationship becomes irrelevant when the journey is focused on becoming whole for oneself. The path is fraught with moments of self-doubt and emotional exhaustion. It is easy to fall back into the old narrative and blame oneself. But the real transformation happens when the person experiencing the almost love shifts their focus from "why won't they commit?" to "what is this situation teaching me about myself?" It is a transition from a mindset of lack to a mindset of profound opportunity. The feeling of not belonging, of being stuck in a categoryless relationship, is a direct manifestation of this internal shift. You are no longer part of the conventional story of love, but are instead beginning a heroic journey into your own psychological depths. The sadness and confusion are not weaknesses. They are the necessary friction that will eventually ignite a fire of self-realization. The true resolution to the almost love mystery lies not in forcing a commitment, but in a profound act of self-reclamation. As the individual begins to understand that the other person's hesitation is a reflection of their own internal struggle, a powerful shift occurs. They cease to see themselves as a passive victim, waiting for validation, and instead become an active participant in their own psychological evolution. This is the moment of deep empowerment, where the focus moves from "why aren't they choosing me" to "I choose myself." This is not an act of arrogance, but an act of profound self-love and self-respect. It's the realization that your wholeness does not require a partner's approval. You are not half of a pair. You are a complete universe in your own right. The moment of transformation is born from a deep internal knowing. When you stop chasing the external label and begin to honor the person you are, the dynamic inevitably changes. You are no longer seeking validation, but embodying your own truth. This can be a terrifying prospect, as it means letting go of the familiar, albeit painful, dance of almost love. The person who was once on the receiving end of the indecisiveness becomes whole, and by becoming whole, she no longer needs to wait for someone else to make her feel complete. This internal integration is the ultimate act of power. It is in this moment that she steps out of the shadow of another person's uncertainty and into the light of her own self-realization. This journey leads to the ultimate state of psychological freedom, a deep sense of autonomy and an unshakable connection to the inner self. She no longer fears being alone because she is no longer truly alone. She has become her own best companion. The need for external validation dissipates, replaced by an inner compass that guides her towards authentic connections and away from dynamics that do not honor her worth. The person who once felt incomplete without a label now understands that the very act of not receiving one was the catalyst for becoming whole. She becomes a sanctuary of her own making, a temple where her inner world is the only one that truly matters. Ultimately, the process of healing from an almost love is the process of transforming oneself from a person who waits for love into a person who embodies it. She becomes her own source of love, validation, and security. And in this state of wholeness, she ceases to be a safe harbor for someone else's unintegrated fears. She becomes whole and, therefore, dangerous. Dangerous to anyone who seeks to keep her in a state of emotional limbo. Dangerous to any narrative that says she is not enough. And dangerous to all who are not ready to meet her in her fullness. She becomes a force of nature, no longer defined by the love she almost had, but by the love she finally found within herself. The raw emotional experience of an almost love can feel like living in a constant state of emotional twilight, a space that is neither fully night nor fully day. There's a pervasive sense of being in limbo, where the feelings are real, the connection is tangible, but the status is perpetually undefined. It is a unique and often confusing form of grief, grieving a relationship that never fully existed, mourning a future that was always just out of reach. We feel the ache of a closeness that is never fully realized, the promise of a future that is never fulfilled. This is not a superficial heartbreak. It is a deep-seated spiritual and psychological wound that touches upon our most fundamental need to be seen, known, and chosen. The pain is valid and real, a signal that our soul is longing for a deeper, more authentic connection. The reason this dynamic is so unsettling is that it creates a profound internal dissonance. The person's actions, the lingering touches, the intimate conversations, the consistent presence, are in direct conflict with their words or lack of commitment. This conflict forces the mind to constantly try to make sense of the contradictory signals, leading to anxiety, overthinking, and a persistent feeling of being crazy. According to Jungian principles, this internal turmoil is a necessary part of the process. It's the psyche's way of forcing a deeper inquiry. The confusion is not a sign of your irrationality, but a sign that your conventional understanding of relationships is being challenged and expanded. You are being pushed to seek a new truth, one that exists beyond the simple binary of yes or no. This sense of feeling stuck is a relatable sensation for many who have experienced almost love. It's a feeling of being a passive character in someone else's story, waiting for them to finally write you in as the lead. It is the feeling of being a beautiful, complex puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit into the box they are offering. But the profound irony is that this stuckness is an illusion. The almost love is not a static state, but a dynamic, ever-changing dance. The perceived lack of movement is what compels the inner psyche to begin its own journey. The pain of feeling stuck is what ultimately frees you, as it forces you to stop looking for movement from the other person and begin moving yourself. We are forced to confront our own internal voids and fears. We may fear that we are unlovable, that we are not enough, that we will be abandoned once again. These are not new fears, but old wounds that the almost love dynamic has so effectively brought to the surface. It is precisely because the commitment is absent that we are forced to look at these fears head-on. The almost lover is not the cause of our fears, but the mirror reflecting them. The raw, unfiltered feelings of angst and loneliness are not a sign of weakness, but a courageous confrontation with the very parts of ourselves that we have been avoiding. The turmoil is a sign that the real work is finally beginning. This journey from almost love to self-realization is, at its core, a psychological hero's journey. It begins with a call to adventure, the unsettling, confusing, and often painful reality of an almost relationship. The initial response is resistance, trying to solve the problem with external solutions, and seeking a definitive answer from the other person. But the true journey begins when the hero, you, accepts the call and turns inward. This is the stage of confrontation, where you face the dragon of your own fears and insecurities, the shadow aspects that have been brought to light by this very dynamic. The almost lover is not the dragon, but the guide who points you to the cave where the dragon resides. Jung would say that this is a descent into the underworld of the psyche. The underworld is a place of shadows, of unhealed wounds, and of forgotten parts of the self. The almost love, in its ambiguity and emotional complexity, serves as the portal to this underworld. You must brave the depths of your own loneliness and pain, not to find the answer to why won't they commit, but to find the pieces of yourself that you have been missing. This is a solitary journey, but it is not a lonely one, as you are in constant communion with your own soul. The pain is the lantern that illuminates the path, showing you where the work needs to be done. The trials and tribulations of this journey are the moments of doubt, the days of sadness, the nights of tears, and the constant mental battle to not revert to the old narrative. Each moment of internal struggle is a test of your resolve, a test of your commitment to yourself. The external world may not understand, but your soul knows what is happening. Each small victory, the moment you choose self-respect over chasing a text, the moment you find peace in your own company, the moment you realize you are enough without external validation, is a treasure you bring back from the underworld. It is a piece of yourself, a lost part of your soul that has finally been reclaimed. The journey culminates not in a relationship with the other person, but in a profound relationship with yourself. You emerge from this crucible of almost love, not as a person who was not chosen, but as a person who has chosen themselves. The ambiguity of the past is replaced with the clarity of a newly found self-worth. You are no longer waiting for a partner to complete you, because you have already completed the journey of becoming whole. The treasure you have gained is an unshakable inner resilience, a deep sense of peace, and the radical knowledge that your love, your existence, and your worth are entirely self-sufficient. This is the true and final liberation. A fundamental shift in perspective is required to truly move through this experience. Instead of seeing the almost love dynamic as a sign of an emotional absence, you must begin to see it as a powerful and transformative presence. The lack of a title is not a vacuum. It is the perfect conditions for a complex psychological process to unfold. The person who keeps you close but won't commit is not simply withholding something from you. They are, in a very real sense, giving you the gift of a psychological mirror. They are a catalyst for your own individuation, a living paradox that forces you to confront the deepest questions about your own identity and worth. You are not a victim of their indecisiveness, but a witness to your own awakening. From a Jungian perspective, the almost lover represents an archetype, the trickster, or a figure from a fairy tale who offers a challenge that, when overcome, leads to profound self-discovery. They are the gatekeeper to a part of yourself you have yet to meet. Their ambivalence is not a personal affront, but a crucial part of the narrative. It is the friction that creates the pearl. The emotional tension, the confusion, and the constant question of what are we, are not an end in themselves but the means to a far greater end, the birth of the fully autonomous self. You are in a dynamic that is not designed to end in a conventional relationship, but to serve as a rite of passage for your soul. The almost love teaches us that what we are seeking externally is often what we must first find internally. The desire for a label, for a formal commitment, is a desire for external validation of our existence. But what this dynamic so beautifully reveals is that our existence, our worth, and our lovability are not contingent on someone else's perception. The true act of love is the one we perform for ourselves, the act of saying, "I am enough," regardless of whether or not someone else chooses to claim me. The almost love is an intense masterclass in this very lesson. It is a spiritual boot camp designed to strip away all the external securities and force us to build our foundation on solid internal ground. Ultimately, the goal is to transcend the need for a title and to rest in the unwavering truth of your own being. The almost love is not a failed relationship. It is a successful transformation. It is the story of how you were led to the very edge of your emotional and psychological limits, only to discover that the greatest love story you will ever have is the one you have with yourself. The person who kept you close but never committed was not a villain but a profound teacher, a necessary character in the grand narrative of your own life. The mystery is not about them, but about the incredible, life-changing truth that you were meant to discover within yourself. The journey from almost love to self-love is not about becoming hardened or cynical. It is about becoming profoundly soft and compassionate with yourself. It is about understanding that the path to true connection with others begins with an unshakable connection to your own soul. The experience of the almost love teaches us that we do not need to be claimed by anyone because we are already sacred and whole within ourselves. It is a powerful message that challenges the very foundation of our dating culture, which is often built on the premise of external acquisition. Instead, it offers a path of internal, soulful reclamation. If this story resonates with you, if you have ever felt the ache of being in an emotional limbo, know this. Your experience is not a sign of your brokenness, but a sign of your impending awakening. The discomfort you feel is the old ego, the external-seeking self being dismantled to make way for the new, autonomous, and whole self. You are not alone in this. You are part of a quiet revolution of consciousness, a group of people who are choosing self-worth over external validation. The mystery of the almost love is not a puzzle to be solved, but a journey to be completed. And that journey always leads you back to your own heart. We invite you to join this conversation. Have you experienced an almost love? What did it teach you about yourself? What was the moment you realized that the external label was no longer what you needed? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Let's create a space where we can talk about these profound psychological journeys and support each other through them. Your story is a vital part of this collective awakening. If this video has shed some light on your own journey, please give it a like to help spread this message to others who might be feeling alone in their almost love. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos that delve into the deeper truths of life and psychology. Remember, you are not alone. You are awakening.